guys. What are we waiting for? Let's go, guys. Let's go.
Well, what I constantly try to do as a director is to up the ante each time out. And the object of this car chase was to make it very violent and put the audience where they really, you're not allowed to go. Once we created this animatic, it was then we had many meetings with stunts and special effects, visual effects, of how we were going to achieve this.
You want to do everything real all the time, especially for somebody like Michael, who's very photographically, obviously his films are very graphic and the photography is just so.
What I want to make it feel real is you gotta pull farther back because the Haitians have been firing, okay?
He wants everything to be as realistic as humanly possible, so that's the driving force behind it. And the idea is that you take advantage of what the stunt guys can do best, and then that one little extra degree that you would have to tuck back to be extra safe, that's where we can help and not look like we helped. And that was the whole idea. It's not to look and take over the frame and say, well, you know, because as soon as you believe everything is fake, then it loses all its impact. It's not dangerous anymore. You know, you almost become who cares. It becomes too much stuff. But if you believe, if your eye tells you that that is absolutely 100% real, it makes it that much scary, that makes it that much more exciting than having 1,000 CG cars and doing impossible flips and spins and all that stuff. It's like you're actually seeing the real thing, and there's something so dynamic about watching a real event take place that all the CG work in the world can't really duplicate the nuances that you can never expect to see on camera. You'd have to direct them specifically, frame for frame, what it does, and you have a guy drive into a car at 70 miles an hour, it's going to do shit. You have no idea what's going to happen, and it looks great. I mean, it looks real. It is real. And a lot of the shots are actually all 100% real. There's nothing synthetic about them.
It's much easier to do it all visual effect, but that's not my style to make it easy. My style is to make it very complicated, but it makes it more real.
So it motivated us to kind of come up with a way of using real stuff, real stunt guys, real tumbling cars, all that sort of stuff, and use sort of a magician's sleight of hand of you would pick the most outlandish thing that would have to have been a trick and make that not the trick, make that actually real life.
There was no option to damage this Ferrari. And the sleight of hand comes in by putting a digital Ferrari that kind of goes away, and that was the trick.
The steps for creating a CG Ferrari is copying the actual real Ferrari and taking loads of pictures and things to really capture like how it reflects light and how much light it absorbs and all that sort of stuff. And then you do little pieces where we have to actually make suspension that works, because part of the thing that makes it look real is the fact that as you move and shift your weight, the springs of the car and the suspension have to move accordingly the way you believe a real car would be.
Okay.
Fine,
Ready,
level
Schwab?
fine.
We're gonna go bottle, ass. David's gonna keep it in. We're gonna watch the thing travel and your hands up, all right?
As soon as you say the butt shot, you pretty much know what you're talking about. So that's how we always refer to it.
Make your ass round, Martin. All right, go forward a hair. Go forward. All right, ready? Look at that bubble butt. All right, and
Hold on.
The whole sort of gestalt of that particular shot was the comedic value. That was the joke was everything, and the joke of him getting shot in the butt and then his reaction, as you know from Martin Lawrence's reactions, are very funny. And so you set up a scenario where he can do basically his bit. And so the idea was, how do you actually photograph something that's graphic and then combine it with comedy? Because you don't actually do that. It's never really combined for comedy. It's always something else.
Yeah, you motherfucker.
The reason to use previs is how to explore different ways of doing it to find which one is the funniest one, the funniest bit. And the one we ultimately ended up with is literally showing it in very graphic detail, this bullet ripping right through. You see his pants shred and the blood spurt, and then you tilt up for his reaction, and his reaction obviously shows that he's okay, except in a tremendous amount of pain, and it becomes a very funny little gag. And the way we ended up photographing it is that we shot with a Photosonics camera, which goes about 360 frames a second.
ready, Dave?
Here we go. Ready?
Ready, and big
Roll.
face here.
And roll camera.
Ready, and roll camera. And bottles, ass, face. Cut.
We shot it in such a generic way that we could choose later to tilt up at any point we wanted to, not limited to the tilt up that happened on the day, because it's very slow.
And we could frame up a little.
You can reposition that.
At 360 frames a second, the bullet's flying. As soon as we finished getting shot in the butt, you whip tilt up to his face, and then his reaction just kept on slowing it up so that his reaction was the funniest, and about 120 frames a second seemed to have the most comedic value. The other thing we wanted to do is basically pan across a bullet, breaking each bottle as it went through. I saw a demonstration of a camera that shoots at 12,000 frames per second, and literally the only way you light is light it with a strobe, like your still camera. The strobe that goes off, that duration, that's the length of time it takes to actually photograph this particular event. You need lasers to actually trip when to fire this, because it's all done in milliseconds. I showed Michael the thing. I said, this is what I wanted to do, which is to basically shoot this in slow motion in various tiles that we pieced together, because it could only be locked off. You can never pan a camera at 12,000 frames per second. So you lock them off and you basically make a large sort of tile of it. And then once you have the large tile of it, it's all seamed together so it looks like it's all one piece. Then you pan across it, and then we add the CG bullet on top of the real bullet that we actually shot. The idea is that we shot it so slowly that you can actually see the real bullet, the real projectile, hit the front lip of the glass, and you see the fissure cracks happen all the way around towards the back end before the bullet actually exits the glass itself. Something you never see in real life because it just goes by so quickly. So we're able to basically piece it all together, make it look seamless, make it look like one shot.
But boom, boom.
When I saw it in the movie theater, people laughed, exactly at the right moment, so I think we probably did okay with that. It's obviously an impossible shot to get. You start on a helicopter from above. It goes dangerously close to the camera. The camera then dives down through a whole series of ducts and vents and various things to get to this rave club, and then continues down, tilts back up and shows the guy who runs the whole place counting his money, and then ending up what he's counting the money for, which is the ecstasy pills at the end. So that was the whole concept. And then you have to break it down into what parts you can actually shoot. And part of the elements that we shot was we did some helicopter plates, and then where we wanted to tilt down, obviously didn't have a building that was appropriate to fly down, so we created a CG version of that building. And then I shot a period of like basically one night, all of the vent stuff inside. I generally like to shoot as much as we can, again with Michael, because he's such a great photographic eye, that, you know, the more CG stuff you do, the more realistic it has to be, the more time it takes, and ultimately there's not that much gain in it when actually if you shoot with smoke and water dripping and, you know, the camera flying down and strobe lights and all that stuff, it ends up giving you like such a tremendous amount of production value that's so difficult to recreate later. So that's what we did, is we just basically art directed this half a mile worth of tunnels and vents and just put a bunch of crap and there's like dead mice in it and old sandwiches that workers that went up there and worked on and fans that don't work that they leave and put a new fan next to it. And so I sort of had a good time just making up stuff out of nowhere that looks like it's all functional, but also is art directed to look like a kind of a cool kind of grim, you know, underbelly of this club. Ends up being another butt shot because of the transition. There was this butt wipe that we labored over getting the girls, you know, to reveal the other plate that's behind it, which is pretty seamless. You can't quite tell, and you have no idea why we did it. We just had to combine two different locations within the rave club to look like it's all one smooth move, and use the butt wipe, we called it, to make that happen. If there's a real piece of glass there, at some point you have to stop the camera and you sense that slow up, and you have to add in the illusion of what shooting through glass or shooting through plastic gives you, which is all the ripple stuff. And then, of course, it's all scratched, and then you have to put in the refraction of the scratch stuff and the way it picks up light and the fact that it's dirty, and so it makes it low contrast. It's got to be sort of art directed to look like it's natural and not something that has been artificially painted. Then we go up into his office, which is built above there, and then restage it again and basically overlap the move coming up to his face. And then we can only go to the pills so much, and then we have to take over with computer-generated pills to continue to get it into a shot where the pill basically fills the frame. So it's a pretty elaborate shot to recreate every single element. Even that little portion becomes, you know, 5 days of testing and fooling around to kind of come up with something that looks like you really shot it.
Ready, and start the music. And play loud. And action, guys.
I remember Michael left the set early that day when we were filming it, and I was left to direct the scenes where the girls are dancing going up, and he just instinctively knew that he could probably do it better than I could. And he came back, and I did a couple things, and I thought they worked pretty well, but apparently I didn't get the butt to whip into the lens just exactly the way he wanted. So he came back and did that thing. He goes, "That's exactly how I want it to look." Okay, good. Glad you're here to do it. All that experience with the Victoria's Secret commercials has sure paid off. It just becomes interesting as you talk to your wife when you're asking how's it going on the set, and it's like, it's okay. And you see somebody go by with a fishnet top on, completely stark naked, fairly attractive, and after a couple days though, it's hot and sweaty and miserable, and you're trying to get through the day, and you end up, you know, do another take, and it becomes very mechanical and not quite as exciting as actually watching the footage of it. In that particular scene, the camera can't really go underneath there at any one time, so we ended up shooting it where it's screaming up, and at a certain point overtake it with a computer-generated version of the same truck. And then we shot a plate, we call it, which is no truck is in the way, driving straight underneath, and a body falls, and then you have to do a whole bunch of work to make it all seem seamless. We had a thing called LiDAR scanning, which is basically a scanner used for military purposes that we took the ice van itself, the actual truck, and scanned. And so basically it makes a 3D computer-generated model of what the underside really looks like. It's the real wheelbase of it. It's really the same length, the width, the same axle. Everything is as if you really did it. If you stuck your head underneath a car, that's what you would expect to see. So it's stuff like that.
A bullet in the head will really mess up your extensions.
It was a spin-around shot, and genesis of that is Michael staging this scene where one person's on one side of the wall, the other person's on the other side of the wall, and what's the coolest way of seeing them essentially simultaneously without just resorting to a cut.
More mango. A bullet in the head will really mess up your extensions.
If you see the background plates, there's no door there, obviously there's no glass there. And we start putting it all back together again. So the idea again is you unencumber the camera's free to go anywhere it wants to, then you put back in the things that would have encumbered it in a normal set. So you're able to get a whole complement of shots that you really couldn't get, you know, that Alfred Hitchcock might have wanted to have gotten years ago that you can't because there's physically a camera with a mass and a guy pushing it can't fit through that hole. Well, now you create the hole later. Instead of literally going through a door, you're actually going through a hole in the door, so the iris of the lens is able to go through something that it looks like you can go through, that you can put your eye through it and be out on the other side. Only if you really understand cameras and the physicality of filming do you know that you can't jam a camera through a hole this big. But the audience doesn't really know that. They don't really grasp it unless they were going to photograph it themselves. Usually when you previs that sort of stuff, it's more for people to actually visualize what's really going to happen. There's only a few people on the set who know what it's really going to look like at the end of the day. And also people get a chance to see, oh, that's what we're doing. The camera's going through the hole in the door. And usually Michael shows Martin or Will when they show up to say, okay, here's what the whole thing we're doing. Because it looks rather peculiar when they're shooting it, because it's basically a big dolly truck and a guy running around in circles. Doesn't really quite have the impact, and they really can't see the benefit of what the other guys are doing behind them anyway, because they're only on their side of the wall.
I'm sorry, hold up. Stay the line right here?
Yeah, what's your line? Stay line.
You want the bullet in your head that's gonna mess up your extensions?
So dolly back farther, Mango.
Just the quality control at each step to make the doors look exactly like real doors would be and not computer-generated doors. And the glass breaking, there are a lot of them are different elements. They're real, and some of them are computer-generated. You'd want to have objects very close that rip by. So the only way to really do it is to basically, just like we're adding the doors after the fact, add these other computer-generated elements that allow you to actually go through like a little portion of the fan all the way through on the other side and still not really give the gag away. You still don't really know how it was done. If you make the fan look real enough, you just have the sort of visceral thrill of going through it. So you create a scene that looks very plausible, and it's just done in a way that you haven't seen before, because very few people actually take advantage of these sort of advances the way like Michael does, or Steven Spielberg, or Bob Zemeckis. You know, the hard part is making it subtle enough so that it feels real to your eye, but yet it's a little more exciting than that. My personal belief is that you sort of do everything under the top instead of over the top, that you tuck it back a little bit so that you believe what you're seeing is real, and then you don't pop out of the scene at all, and then you rely on the strength of the scene to actually sell the moment.